Hello and welcome back, my little Halloweenies. Good to see you all. I missed you. Today we're going to be talking about The Raven. This film starred Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff. The plot is that the evil Dr. Volan, who is obsessed with Edgar Allan Poe, builds torture devices based on the works of Poe. In this case, a room where the walls close together, and the pit in the pendulum device where a pendulum with a large knife on it, basically, is swinging back and forth, getting lower and lower and lower until it chops into the person below. He builds these torture devices because of his obsession with Poe, but when he falls in love with a young woman who he saves because he has to do surgery on her, and her father, among other people, do not want the two of them to be together, and it turns out the young woman is actually falling in love with him, and so he has a chance. But when all of these family members do not want the two of them to end up together, Dr. Volan decides to play a little game of torture, where he invites all of these people to his house and decides in the middle of the night to torture them all to death, one by one. This film is one of the darker horror films in the early days of horror. It really has no scruples about some of the things that it gets across, and the disturbing material is more disturbing than a lot of the things in modern horror. For instance, Dr. Volan, played by Bela Lugosi, ends up meeting a criminal named Bateman, played by Boris Karloff, and when they meet, Bateman is threatening Volan, literally at gunpoint, to do plastic surgery on him because Bateman is a wanted criminal and he wants his face changed so that he can get away from the law. He actually says that because he's so ugly, he feels like in some way that contributed to the fact that he ended up doing a life of crime, that ugly people must have something ugly within them that makes them that way, and that if his face were made beautiful on the outside, perhaps he would become a better person on the inside. He tells Bateman that he'll only do the surgery if Bateman agrees to murder these people for him so that his fingerprints won't be on it. However, Bateman refuses, threatens him some more, and then Volan says, "Okay, I'll change your face," puts him under and does the surgery, and when Bateman comes out, he has been horribly, hideously mutilated so that he looks sort of like he had a severe stroke. One of his eyes won't close and it droops heavily, his mouth does not work. In fact, the entire side of his face is paralyzed. And he tells Bateman, "Oh yeah, I have the power to fix your face and make you look even better than before, but I'm going to leave you a hideous monster unless you help me murder these people." So this guy who, yes, has done evil things in the past, but actually broke out to change his ways and become a better person, is now being forced into murdering again. There's a real disturbing factor to when he first sees his face, and Dr. Volan has set up like 6 or 8 mirrors on the wall just to have a huge reveal where the poor man can't get away from his own hideously deformed face. Well, Bateman agrees to work with him and pretend to be sort of a servant or butler, and he does this so that he can pull off the murders, but the whole time he's just trying to warn the people because he wants his face fixed, yet he doesn't actually want these people to die, especially the young woman. In just the first few minutes of the film, Dr. Volan's love interest is driving along and going way too fast. She sees a detour sign and swerves to avoid it and flies off into a ditch, and it nearly kills her. Dr. Volan is called in because he's literally the only surgeon skilled enough to save her, and he comes in and he saves her life, and then we flash forward, and after a while of recovery, the two of them actually become quite close, and because he saved her life, she's falling more in love with him than she is with her fiancé, who she was engaged to before the accident. Judge Thatcher, her father, comes to talk to Dr. Volan and say, "Listen, we don't want her getting the wrong idea, so maybe you guys shouldn't be hanging out anymore." And Bela Lugosi, he just brilliant actor. I mean, really, I know people talk about him. He's a household name, and yet he's so underrated. Everybody just thinks of him as, "Oh yeah, that's Dracula." This man was a brilliant actor. When he gets angry because Judge Thatcher says, "You saved her from death once before, and now," and Bela says, "and now you want to save her from me," and he crushes this vial in his hand. And it's one of the only times you'll see blood in one of these old movies. There's blood right out of his hand, and Judge Thatcher gives this little, momentary beat where he's like, oh, I think I see what's going on here. Bela really has this magic about his performances in these films. You don't see it as much in Dracula, funny enough. Even though he is undoubtedly the definitive Dracula to many people, myself included, his acting chops are really fine. This is a man who was one of the great actors of his era, yet because he was so good at one specific role, he got pigeonholed for the rest of his life, and it really kind of sucks. This is probably the only film that they were ever in together, although they were in several films together, where Bela Lugosi really gets the chance to outshine Boris Karloff. I think it's because Boris is a much more subtle, modernistic actor, and although he is still a bigger actor than we would commonly see today, there's still something a little bit more subdued about his performances, and I think he appeals more to the modern sensibility. However, there's just something so European, so deliciously 30s about Bela Lugosi's acting, and this, I think, might be the greatest performance of his career. And the end, I don't want to spoil it, but when he meets his demise, his performance, without words, he gets across the fact that he realizes what a tremendous misstep all of this was. And it's like, with just 2 expressions from him, you get that he suddenly comes to hate and regret the obsession with Poe that has led him to this moment. He also recites the Raven a couple times throughout this, and I kind of wish there was a recording. Maybe there is, and I've just not found it. But I would love to find a recording of him reciting the whole poem. As it is, though, we do have a great adaptation of The Telltale Heart, where Bela Lugosi does the voice of the narrator in that, and he is superb. We'll talk more about that in a later video, though, because I will be spotlighting a little special that includes the audio from that. So if you've not ever gotten to see this before, I highly recommend you check it out. It's only like an hour long, and seriously, it's one of the sublime works of cinema in the horror genre for the 1930s. I mean, from the 30s, you just don't find many more brilliant little stories than this. So that's all for today. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Stay spooky, my friends. That was really lame. Gotta work on a better catchphrase.